Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. All right. This is Better Said Than Done. Do we have any first-timers tonight? Oh, one. Okay, very well. Well, let me explain to you in great detail how this goes. So basically, Better Said Than Done, this is personal, true stories told live. And when we do this, we take weeks to meticulously come up with our stories and craft them in just such a way as to tug your heartstrings and really make you feel the stories and the lives that we've lived. And tonight we're throwing that out. We're doing our annual improv show. And the way that this works is we're going to play a couple of games up here just to sort of come up with some topics, elicit some ideas for the tellers. And then once we've done those, we're going to go ahead and whoever among our selected tellers up here comes up with something that has been suggested during those games, they'll come on up and they'll tell a brief story on that. I'm also going to be coming to the audience for particular things. I'll be looking for words from you. That'll be a separate section. I will come to you for that. And please rev your brains up now to get to be part of that. I have our tellers here. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Just basically, we're going to start with just your names. And I have a question that I want you to start with. So, we are here. We're almost at Halloween. We have a few folks in costume tonight. Describe your favorite Halloween thing. That can be an activity or a particular candy or the costumes or whatever it might be. And we are going to start over here with Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Ben-Bennick, and I am a big fan of something you do not see in the bags anymore, popcorn balls. How many people remember popcorn balls?
Yes.
How many of you ever made popcorn balls? You burned your fingers?
No, but I will never do it again.
Which is why we don't see them anymore.
All right.
I'm Jack Pilar. My favorite thing about Halloween is quarters, because our neighbor never gave out candy. They gave out quarters. So you walked away from there, you had money.
All right. Very good.
Thanks for thinking I'm taller.
I should have done this by height.
My name is Catherine Calvin, and I remember popcorn balls, but my uncle was a dentist, and I did not like getting a toothbrush. Not fun. And I also did not care for the fact that he lived on a golf course and people actually gave us golf balls. Where is the fun in that? So no, not impressive. But my favorite thing about Halloween is haunted houses. I love the scarier, the better. And the one to beat for me is the 13th Gate in Baton Rouge. If you get a chance, check it out.
All right. Very good.
I'm Sandra Hall, and I'm not against Halloween, but I want to remind everyone of something that they seem to have forgotten, which is Halloween is October 31st, people. I was on Reddit on August 1st, just browsing as I do, and in one of the subs that I frequent, someone was like, it's August 1st, it's finally Halloween season. No. No. I mean, if you craft, okay, I get it, but still, it's not Halloween season, it's August. Anyway, I'm all for Halloween. I like dressing up, I like giving candy, I like getting candy, it's all good. For those of you who drink, and if don't drink and you're in a bar, that's your problem. Try, what is it? It's caramel flavored vodka in apple juice. Good stuff. Or apple flavored vodka and caramel juice, whatever works for you, it's all good. But basically, because I'm Halloween and Halloween only, I identify as boo humbug.
Very good. All right. Okay, so got a variety of likes. Got some of the dislikes in there. Apparently, this is also Festivus. I'm open to that. Not a problem. All right, so I'm going to pitch a scenario to you. And each one of you, I want you to give me your answer. You are going to a Halloween potluck. Describe your costume and what you are bringing. So I'll throw out a quick example. Last night I was at a costume party and I was in my my casual Starfleet outfit, not the dress outfit with the fancy trim, just very casual yellow shirt. And with that I probably would have brought Tribble souffle. All right, anybody got something?
My costume is featuring stilts. But again, because I'm kind of this way on Halloween, my costume is a white sweatshirt, white sweatpants, a black mask with the elastic behind it, and the word costume in red black letters, generic. And I am bringing vodka.
Okay, all right.
I'm worse than that. Jack Pilar is cheap. I don't believe in paying money for anything. So the whole idea of putting on a costume means I had to go out someplace and actually buy a costume. Maybe I would put a garbage bag over my shoulders and, I'll go as a, bag of trash. So other than that, I'm pretty cheap. But I will take candy corn to a party. If I go to a party, I love the little candy corn. So I'll take the candy corn.
All right, very good.
20-somethings are always amazed when I tell them that, yes, I do play Dungeons and Dragons. I remind them that Dungeons and Dragons have been around longer than they have. At any rate, I would go as a D&D character, most likely Bambi, 2 eyes, and would bring something called Rat on a Stick, which is an honest-to-goodness recipe. You can find it online. Hamburger around a cheese glob on a stick of spaghetti. Bake it in the oven, cover it with barbecue sauce, and people will eat it even when you tell them it's a rat on a stick.
All right. Ooh.
I always regret when I wear an elaborate costume. It's usually uncomfortable and itchy and too hot. So I would probably go wearing a t-shirt and my little ears and call it a day. But what I would bring, I would invest a lot of effort in. I have some of those syringe shooters, and the last time I made black vodka shooters, and they were awesome. So look for me and those black vodka shooters.
Right. Folks, thank you so much. Big round of applause for our first group. I think I'm going to break it up and I'm going to go to the audience now. Now, I'm asking for one response, so I'm going to ask folks to raise their hands if they have one. I'll call on people so that we get a good variety of responses. So I'm just looking for one-word answers here, and we'll start very simply. Could someone give me a dinner food?
Cauliflower.
Cauliflower. You and I have very different ideas of dinner.
I said cheese.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right. Can I get a city?
Fairfax.
All right, I do want those hands, but Fairfax, we will take that. Fantastic. Next one, an item of clothing. Who's got one? Show me your hand. Item of clothing. A hat. Okay, fantastic. And we'll finish this one up even more broadly than all of that. Give me a drink. Give me a drink. All right, let me see a hand. Who's got a drink? Yes?
Butterbeer.
Butterbeer, fantastic. Okay, so as I said, all of these ideas, everything we've talked about up here, any of these things can be used for story fodder later. But first, we're going to go to our second group. So I am now going to ask, and you know who you are, so start moving up here. I need Richard, I need Sarah, I need Colleen, and I need Jessica. All right, for this one, it is autumn, all right? And I think of autumn as the time of coziness. Tell me, what is the one thing, the one item, the one event, whatever, that makes you feel most cozy? What makes you feel most cozy? And introduce yourself.
I'm Colleen Pilar, and I'm going to cheat a little. The thing that makes me feel most cozy is hanging out and cuddling with my dog. But when I think of cozy, I have to tell you, I think mostly of my husband, who has what we call his everywhere blanket. And it comes out in September, and he puts it on when he gets home from work and wears his everywhere blanket, his robe, until he goes to bed, regardless of what is happening, pretty much every day until late March, early April. So we all joke about when the everywhere blanket comes out, we know it's cozy season, and it's a very long season.
All right. Jessica.
All right, so I have kids now, so I haven't been cozy in about 6 years. But growing up, we had a fireplace in our den, and then my dad had a fireplace in his den, and then my first house had a fireplace, and my last, well, technically the house we're in now has a fireplace, but we don't use it because of the, kids. So just sitting in front of the fire and just roasting, I don't know how many people have done that where you're just like sitting on the couch and you're kind of like, I can't keep my eyes open because it's so warm and toasty, and yeah, that's where I'm most cozy, and also I miss it terribly.
Oh, all right.
See, that was
Yeah,
painless.
look at that.
I'm Sarah Snyder. I'm going to take this minute to
Please.
plug my memoir, which is for sale at the front door. Plant Trees, Carry Sheep, A Woman's Spiritual Journey Among the Sufis of Scotland. I've been plugging it for a year now. It's finally out. So special sale price, $10 if you want to buy it. Let me know at the end of the show. So cozy. Well, fall happens to be my favorite season for a lot of reasons. For one, my birthday falls in the fall, so I always think of it as my season. And like my friend here, I also have an everywhere blanket, but it's one of those snugglies, I think they're called, which effectively they're a bathrobe, but you just wear it backwards. You put your arms through so you can read on the couch, and it's bright blue, and I wear it everywhere, and I look like a little Smurf when I do, and my husband makes fun of me because I'm always tripping on it because it's too long. But anyways, it makes me feel cozy. Thank you.
I'm Richard Barr, and I guess the coziest time I have is because my wife works on her feet all day, so I get to sit with her and massage her feet at night.
Good
And that works.
All right. All right. You are on an unlimited budget. Deck out your ultimate cozy den, man cave, she shed, cabin, what have you.
Okay, so it's unlimited budget. So my she shed is in the south of France, and it's got multiple rooms. So there's a wine cellar from the local regional wine, and there's cheese. We'll just give that its own cellar too. And there's local regional cheese, and of course a French staff who can serve me the wine and the cheese and the crackers. And probably rub my feet too, because let's face it, my husband's probably not going to do that for me. And then there's going to be a movie theater where I'm going to watch Netflix mostly, and a basketball court, because why not? It's unlimited, and that's very cozy, right? Having sports and then an elevator that will take me to the 16-car garage that has all the convertibles that I can drive around the south of France. So there you go. Very cozy.
All right.
Okay, well, I'm a Montana gal, so my cozy is going to be a mountain cabin. And, ooh, yay, yay. And there's going to be a lake. I don't want a river. I like flowing water, but I'm a little worried about this climate change thing that's happening. You might have heard about it. Rivers rise and fall, so I'm going to be on a lake, which I suppose technically could rise and fall too. But there's going to be a big picture window so that I can sit in my overstuffed chair, and I'll probably have maybe a baby grizzly bear in my lap, because they're very fuzzy, and my hot drink of something, alcoholic probably, and my husband is going to be at my feet giving me a foot massage.
All right.
All right, yeah. What I would like is to have I don't need a lot of space, but I would like a a double room with one side is a glass wall, and on the other side of the glass are tropical birds and little trees and things like that for them to flit around in. And you have to have the glass walls so they don't mess all over. No need to clean up. And then I would also, in addition to the standard electronics and all that, is have some wide tables so I can finally sort through all the crap I've been saving in boxes and figure out what it is. I need that, and that would do it.
I think the unlimited budget threw me off because you already met Jack, who doesn't spend money, and that's where my brain thinks. So my cozy spot is a room with a chair that is comfortable for my hips, that I could sit in for a long time and read novels. And my dog is with me, and there's a fireplace and some chocolate. So I don't know how much budget I need for that, but if it's unlimited, that's what I'm getting.
All right, some great answers. Let's get another quick round of applause for this group of tellers. Go ahead and have a seat. All right, and now to my tellers. We have a variety of keywords and subjects and ideas that have just been spoken here up on this stage. Who among you has, Jack is jumping right up. Jack Pilar has the first story of the night.
All right, so we're going to focus on the butterbeer. But I got to tell you, it's going to take me a while to get there. So, in 2010, quite frankly, I went through cancer. And it was ugly. And when I came out of that, my lovely bride had a symposium that she was going to in Florida. Disney World, was it? Yeah, whatever. So it was like I decided to go along with her. Now, if you go to Florida and you got to rent a car, you're going to rent a convertible. So in those days, it was a Chrysler Sebring. Who really wants a Chrysler Sebring? But that was what was on the website, so that's what I got. We got there and went up to the rental car place, and the guy's talking about Chrysler Sebring. He says, I have Camaros on the lot. Would you like to be in a Camaro? Hell yeah. And he says, I have this 8-cylinder Camaro. Do you want an 8-cylinder Camaro? Hell yeah. This guy thinks he's upselling me left and right. He has no idea what I've been through in the past year, and I will spend any amount of money to rent this car. I didn't care. I was also at a point where we were looking to get a new car at that point, and yeah, Camaro was kind of on the realm of the possibility. And when it turned out, we rented the car, and it's not really a commuter car. It's not one that you want to drive back and forth to work in, but I paid a hell of a lot for that car because it was appropriate and I deserved it. So while we were there, we didn't really go to Disney World. You don't really want to go to Disney World. That's for little kids. And we're adults. We're going to the adult park. So we went to Universal Studios. And at that point in time, Universal Studios had opened up a Harry Potter park. It wasn't really a park, but part of the park was Harry Potter. And there's a ride there. It's 3-dimensional. You sit there and it's up and down and all around, and then just around you is all this scenery. It's the best ride ever. If you ever go to Universal Studios and you don't go on the ride, shame on you. Thank you.
When I got a job where I could travel, and when I was assigned to that, I immediately flashed back to all the old movies I'd seen on TV with Spencer Tracy and Clark Gable and like that, and they were always in exotic places, and they all wore these great hats. You see. So I went out and bought a hat, and it looked similar to the Indiana Jones type hat, and I wore that all over the world. Generally, when I was in other countries, they all thought it was a cowboy hat. That was the thing. So sometimes I didn't wear it. I would get a baseball cap instead. And I borrowed from my kids, and I started off with a Mets cap. And when I was in airports and like that, other Americans would come up to me and ask me how the Mets were doing. And I had no idea. I didn't follow them very much. So I got rid of that cap. I spent some time in the U.S. going through the sports pages trying to find out which team was the most consistent so that I could wear that cap, and whatever anybody asked me, I could say, oh, yeah, well, they're right here. And the team I found was the Chicago Cubs. That year, they were always next to the bottom. They were never at the bottom, but they never got any higher. It was always next to last in their division. And so I got a Cubs cap, and I wore that all over, and nobody ever asked me anything, so I don't know what that was.
So I wasn't in the round where we were asked about the cozy place, but I would definitely be Jessica's neighbor and have a similar sort of place, but I would have a foot masseur on staff. Masseur, not masseuse. And it would also feature a hot tub. Because hot tubs, let's face it, it's like sitting in the fire, only you're wet. You get warm, and it's just all over you, and you got the whirlpool going. It's lovely. So one time, I was at a very adult party at a townhouse out near Dulles, enough said, and I was in the hot tub. And it felt so good. It was relaxing. I was with my sweetie. I was with a bunch of other people, some of whom I had just met, some of whom I hadn't met yet. But it was okay because we were in the hot tub, and it was marvelous. Did I say it was marvelous? Because it was marvelous. So relaxing. And I was laying back, my eyes closed, all my work worries melting away, until I heard a woman who had just recently joined us in the hot tub say conversationally to someone next to her, oh yeah, I work at the so-and-so building over there, with the Department of blah, blah, blah. That's where I worked. As a government contractor. She was regular government. If you don't know how it works, here's the hierarchy. There's pond scum, child murderers, a bunch of other stuff, and government contractors. Here I am in this hot tub, not wearing anything except the hot water, with this woman who, if she decides she doesn't want me at work because I know things, can make me go away like that. All the cozies just melted right away. Until that woman looked at me, and I think she read what was going through my mind. I think my face was something like, not cozy. She just gave me a little wink and a thumbs up, and I knew it would be okay. Because after all, what happens in the hot tub stays in the hot tub.
Something that was keyed off of, candy corn was brought up. And this is, I found, a very divisive subject. So can I hear by applause who likes candy corn? All right. Who doesn't like candy corn? All right, it's pretty clear with this audience, more for us.
Not crazy about the candy corn, but Jack's story reminded me of a story. Like Jack, I love the open road, and when I turned 16, there was almost no looking back. And my dad had tried really, really hard to prepare me to be a driver. We had all the driving lessons in the school parking lot. I learned how to change the oil. And when he finally sent me off on the road in the family car, it was in a diesel to make sure that my lead foot was kept at bay. And because it was a diesel, it was very important to him that I knew how to pump the gas and where to pump the gas. Usually it was on the back side of the gas station where all the big trucks go. And he wanted to make sure I was very comfortable with this process. Despite that, I have never met a diesel that I cannot run out of gas. Now, if you've never had the pleasure of running an old diesel out of gas, what happens when you finally get some fuel back into it is you gotta pump and pump and pump. And a half hour later, pump and pump and pump. And then eventually the fuel makes its way through the line and you are on your way again. So when I bought my own first car, I opted not to get a diesel. Nonetheless, I still found a way to run it out of gas. And this was back in the days before we had cell phones. So I clearly remember the night. I'm sitting on the side of 495. It's about 11 o'clock at night. I'm all by myself and I can't go anywhere. And by the way, I'm in a Jeep with the top open, so I'm feeling just a wee bit exposed. And that was when I started to cry, all by myself, when the little emergency services highway guy came upon me and he got some gas in my car. He followed me to the gas station and he got me going again. And then I proceeded to run the work van out of gas while I was driving people to the airport. That is really not the time that you want to tell people, oopsie, what time is your flight? We're gonna be here a while. But thankfully we had a little CB in there so I could call back to the front desk and be like, I need a little assistance here. There's no gas in the van. So with all of this under my belt, I was sitting on 495 on Friday, Good Friday afternoon, stuck in traffic, going nowhere, when suddenly I realized my gas was really, really low. And because we weren't going anywhere, I really didn't have any idea how much I had left, but I was quite certain I was not gonna make it all the way home to Reston from Alexandria. So I sat there and I started to sweat a little bit and I started to recall how awful it is when you run out of gas and you're stranded, and I really wanted to get home, and what should I do? And I'm like, I feel like what I need to do is get off at the next exit and go find gas before I go any further. But of course I'm not moving anywhere. So I'm sitting, and I'm probably sitting about 20 minutes, getting increasingly more anxious, and I realize I've moved forward a few feet, and the exit ramp is just out of reach. But if I drive on the shoulder, I can go around these cars that are just sitting here and make it to the safety of the gas station. And then I thought, but it's not technically the ramp, it's not technically legal. Is this really a good idea to get out of traffic and go on the shoulder? And so I had this internal debate, meanwhile going almost nowhere and getting increasingly distressed and feeling like I'm about to cry. And then I made my decision, because then I had to pee. So I put my signal on and I looked over my shoulder. I didn't see anyone coming. I kept my eye on the mirror. I darted into the shoulder and bam! Out of nowhere, a car slams into me. And then I really did start to cry. And at first I didn't know what to do. It was my first accident. And I started doing my mental checklist. I feel okay, I'm a little shaken up, but I don't think I'm hurt. I think what I need to do is check on my car. So I get out of the car and I'm feeling a little wobbly, I'm crying. And the guy, the driver of the other car, gets out of his car, comes around to the front where he's met the back of my car, and he slams his hands down on the hood and says, "You blank blank. Watch where you're going." And then I just lost all kinds of control, and I'm sobbing and I'm out of control, and there's 3 young men in the back seat of the car. And so they come around to try to console me. And then the police show up and it was all very exciting. We exchanged information. As it turns out, the driver of the other car was a Marine recruiter with a car full of recruitees. And so his government insurance covered all of the damage. But in the course of exchanging the information, the 3 young men all collected my phone number as well. So the next week began a series of phone calls where each of them called me and said, yes, I met you by accident on the Beltway. I wanted to find out if you were okay and if you'd like to go out. So I had one date with each of them and then kind of moved on because I was busy, had other stuff to do. But all of them apologized for the treatment that the recruiter had given to me. And I kind of didn't think that much of it because I was already in such distress that it kind of rolled off my shoulders at the time. But I'll tell you, the Marines take this very seriously. So fast forward about 2 months, and this guy showed up in his full uniform to my parents' house in Alexandria. And he rang the doorbell, and he called my father, sir, and walked in the home and delivered a flawless apology to me. Since that moment, find something to knock on here, I have not run out of gas.
So all this talk of Florida and massages or hot tubs or any of that stuff made me think about my ex-boyfriend. Yeah, don't tell my husband. So the guy I was dating before I married my husband, this guy Russ and I, we went down to Florida for our first vacation together. And he was, unlike Jack, he was a big spender. And so we stayed in like the Omni Resort, right, on his dime. Yes, yeah, it was very fancy. It had a lazy river, like that's the type of hotel it was. And on our first day there, Russ was like, let's get massages, because of course the hotel was also a spa. So he went with one person to get a massage, and I went with the other, and it was a guy. And now I am a fan of massages. I have had massages from men and from women, and I will tell you, I remember when my dad was sick, I got him a massage because I thought it would help him with his aching muscles, and he was like, ooh, a massage. Like, this is kind of weird that my daughter is getting me a massage. And I was like, what are you talking about? But of course it was my dad, so he was like thinking he'd get a happy ending because that's the kind of family I grew up in. So I go to Florida with my boyfriend, and he goes off with one person to get a massage, and I go off with another, and I didn't even register the fact that they sent him off with a female, and they sent me off with a male. And the guy's given the massage, and I don't know if you've ever had a massage before, but professional masseuses do not give you the weird ickies, right?
They're not supposed to.
Right. And this guy kind of was. So, let's just, without getting too graphic, let's say I'm face down, and he's massaging my lower back, and then just a little bit of my buttocks. And then I'm like, wait, did he just touch me there? No, it's just in my head, right? But then I turn over, and then there's just a little slip here and there, and I didn't know what to do because you're naked and you have a man that you're paying to touch you, touching you. So it was very uncomfortable and very weird, and I didn't do anything about it until I got out of there, and then I told my boyfriend, because he's my boyfriend. He's the big, strong man who's supposed to protect me from these things, and I said, this was really uncomfortable for me. Like, I feel like we should complain to the manager. I feel like we should say something to someone about this, because this is not the way you're supposed to get treated. And my boyfriend looked at me and said, well, he probably was trying to see if you wanted a happy ending. And then I thought, did you get the same treatment? Long story short, I am not with him anymore. I am married to a very nice man who gives me many foot rubs. So, thank you.
So we had a story about cars and driving. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Earlier, and so I'm going to riff off that. I mentioned earlier that I'm a Montana girl, but it actually took me several years to get out there. My great-grandmother was born and raised in Montana, but then her husband came from the east and got her pregnant and moved her back to the east. And so that's how my family ended up east, and ever since we had been trying to get back west again, particularly my dad, because he loved the mountains, and he instilled that in us. So his father, whose mother it was that was born and raised in Montana, his father and his uncle had started a trucking company, and so they loved to drive. They just loved to be on the road, and I think that just kind of came into my DNA because my father also loved to drive. Now, he was a Presbyterian minister, and every summer he had a month off of work, and so he would have to flee where we lived. This was in suburban Chicago when I was little. And he would have to flee because otherwise if he was home and his parishioners knew he was there, they would call him because nobody could sort out their own problems. They always had to ask Dad to help them. So because Dad loved to drive and because he loved the West and the mountains, he would always pile all 5 of us kids and the dog and my mom into our old Chevy's 1970s, 69, 70 Chevy station wagon and drive us out west. Now, it wasn't about, they say, oh, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Well, for my dad, it was about the destination, and we all suffered because of that. So he could not ever wait to get to the West. We'd go to Yellowstone and Glacier Park and places like that, go camping. And it was camping because we lived on a minister's salary and my mom was a teacher, so in other words, we were really poor and all we could afford to do was camp. And we couldn't afford to fly. So anyway, my dad would pack the car the night before, and he'd make us all sleep when we were little, or sleep in the car the night before we left, because he didn't want to have to wait for us all to get hauled out of bed in the morning. We had to sleep in the cars because he was getting up at dark 30 and he was hitting the road, and my mom would be mad if he left without all the rest of us. So he figured this was the best chance I had of not getting my wife angry at me, is actually having everybody in the car. So anyway, again, for Dad it was about the destination, so we would just beeline for the West, and it takes probably from Chicago a few days. And my dad had the CB radio, and he loved, talking to the truckers and on all that. And he was, he would listen to country music, and CB radio is like a gateway to listening to country music, the gateway drug. So anyway, I do actually, I'm not speaking derisively, I do actually have very fond memories of all these road trips we used to take. But he was so eager to get there that we rarely stopped. We would stop for gas, and the other way we would stop, we would always have to pack food and water because he wasn't stopping to eat. But if we ran out of food and water on the way, the other way we knew that we had to stop was because Mom would faint because she had low blood sugar, and when Mom fainted, we knew, okay, it's gas or Mom fainting, that's when we pull over. So, and here's the thing, this is this is the 1970s, right? So nobody wore seatbelts and you could drive 90 miles an hour. Well, my parents, when they would switch drivers, we wouldn't actually stop the car to switch drivers. And this is when you had the bench seat in the front, and one of them would be driving and the other would be sitting in the passenger seat. And so if Dad was driving, he was a lead foot, he would slow down to 75, and then Mom, being the smaller one, would slide across the seat over top of him, and Dad would slide under. First, she would put her foot on the gas pedal, so they would trade feet on the gas pedal, and she'd put her foot, and then they'd go 1, 2, 3, slide, and then they'd slide. And this is with 5 kids and a dog in the car and no seatbelts. And then they'd slide over, and she'd slide on top of him, and he'd slide under, and she'd grab the wheel, and there we go, because we cannot stop. God forbid we should stop. So, we have fond memories of this, and we, there's all kinds of stories about we pulled over one time because my dad saw a drunk driver, and he went up to the guy who would pull off to the side of the road, and he took the car keys out and chucked them into the, to the verge so the guy, couldn't drive anymore. This is the kind of guy my dad was. But anyway, So my dad, some of the places we used to stop along the way were the family favorites, like who hasn't been to Wall Drug, right? Everybody stops at Wall Drug, and everybody stops at the Corn Palace. Who's been to the Corn Palace? These places were not so touristy back then, and they're a lot more touristy now. We used to go to Wall Drug back when they just were a drugstore in the 1960s and served cold water. So anyway, we have these fond memories of stopping at all these places. Well, my dad died a little over 6 years ago, and we wanted to, he was cremated, and we thought, how fitting would it be? He's always wanted to live in Montana. He never quite got out there to live. So let's put him out there in death. So we had a final road trip for him the summer after he died. We took his ashes, which we almost left on the kitchen counter when we were running out the door to get ready. And we took his ashes and we stopped at all the familiar places along the way to sprinkle a little bit of Dad around. And so my mom, it was a little bit tough for my mom. She was like, you know, she wasn't quite sure how she felt about her husband being scattered all over the place, but there were a couple places where we scattered his ashes where we didn't actually tell her that we were doing that. One of them was the Corn Palace. There was some touristy thing there about some old miners, and Dad loved this kind of cheesy, trashy, touristy stuff. He just loved it. So I had a pocket full of his ashes that I put in a little vial that I took out with me when we stopped at the Corn Palace for a break, and you know, and remembering Dad. And when my mom wasn't looking, I pulled out this little vial of Dad's ashes and I poured them in this this gold pan that was this mannequin sitting on a bench of a gold panner at the Corn Palace, and I thought, you know, Dad would appreciate that. And we sprinkled them in his favorite fishing spots all along the way. And his final resting place, though, for the bulk of his ashes was Montana at the top of a mountain, and he finally got there. But darn it, we stayed in hotels every night on the way out there. No switching drivers in the middle of the road, nothing like that. And I'm sure Dad would have approved. Thank you.
I am very, very glad that your father and my father never met, because we would have been sleeping in the car for our trips back to Chicago every summer. Okay, so we are up on a break. You're not limited in this second half to stories that are just inspired by what we talk about this time. If the cauliflower thing comes back to you and you suddenly realize you've got a great cauliflower story, come on up. All right, so I'm going to reverse this, and I'd like that first group to be the second group from the first half. So Jessica, Colleen, Sarah, and Richard, come on up. All right, yeah, let's give them another round of applause. Wow, look at that. It's like muscle memory. Well done. So this one's a fairly simple and straightforward one. Most famous person you've ever met, and what were the circumstances?
The most famous person I ever met was Carol Burnett. I met her on the set of the Desperate Housewives show. I was in California for a dog training conference, and my dog training business partner's brother was one of the camera operators for Desperate Housewives. So we were allowed to come to the set and hang out for a taping, and it just happened to be the episode on which Carol Burnett was starring.
So some of you know I used to work in the film industry, so I'm just trying to think of who the most famous person would be. Daryl Hannah, Mickey Rourke, Elijah Wood, Frodo?
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I used to work in the film industry, so I met a lot of people. But I will say, outside of the film industry, I went to a screening of Night Mother, and I met Kurt Vonnegut. So there you go. Someone, and I will tell you, I think I might have said this to some people before, I was completely starstruck in a way I was never with any, actors, to the point where I got to go up and shake his hand, and he's taller than Jack. He's super tall, and I go up on stage and I shake his hand and I say, "You're such a great writer," and he goes, "Uh-huh." And he's just holding my hand, like waiting for me to say something intelligent, so I say, "You're just so great." And then he goes, "Uh-huh," and then he turns and he walks away. So that was my Kurt Vonnegut.
Your story being tall reminded me of the most famous person I ever met. Who remembers, and like I can't because I'm postmenopausal and I can't remember anything, but I know too much information, I'm sorry. Who is the guy from Wild Kingdom, Jim, who used to jump out of the helicopter on the charging buffaloes?
Yeah,
Jim.
Yeah.
Jim. He had a last name. Anyway, I used to volunteer for the International Wildlife Film Festival many years ago, and we had Jim come to the festival and talk about tall. I think the guy was 6'7", and one night I was standing next to him at a party, and I think I came up to his belly button. And anyway, he was like the most gentle giant I had ever met. He was very soft-spoken. You'd think of this guy as real macho and, you know, bravado and all this stuff, and no, he wasn't. He was the most gentle person I'd ever met who'd ever jumped out of helicopters on top of water buffalo.
About 1958, 59, somewhere like that, my parents took my sister and I to visit Washington, D.C., and we went to the Capitol building, you know, as part of the tourist thing. And in those days, you could go in the thing where you look over the edge and you can see Congress down there. We were looking at the Senate, and my parents pointed out, they said, oh, there goes John Kennedy. And all I saw was a back leaving through the door. So and I had no idea who he was anyway. But then we go into the hall, and we're ready to leave. And as we're walking along, there's a group of men coming this way. And my father, who was a salesman and very friendly, he goes, "Hi, Dick." And it was Richard Nixon, who was vice president at the time. And so, of course, the Secret Service guys were all, you know. And Nixon comes over, you know, he shakes my father's hand, shakes my hand, you know, asks how we are and where we're from and all that sort of thing. And my father said, "We're with you all the way," because he was an Eisenhower Republican. And so that was the whole thing there. I met Richard Nixon before he was president. Actually, before he lost the presidency, and then he became later on. Okay.
That reminds me of maybe not the most famous, but one of my favorite interaction out in the wild. I was on my first solo trip up to New York City, and I'd just landed at JFK, and I was trying to find the luggage claim, and a very attractive older woman came up to me and asked if I knew where Gate A was, and I said, "No, I'm sorry, Candace Bergen. I just landed here too." And she said, "Okay, no problem," and just walked away. And it was a totally random encounter. I will never forget that moment. All right, so your scenario, building off of this. You are on a 6-hour flight. You are stuck in the middle seat. What two famous people would you want sitting on either side of you? And what would the three of you talk about, do, etc.? So, if I had my druthers, I guess I would go with Sir Patrick Stewart. I'm going to give him the window seat. He likes the view. And I think on the other side, I am going to go with, let's make it Martin Sheen, because I just love the West Wing. And I think we'd have a jolly talk about leadership and what it takes to portray that. All right, any ideas? Who's got something?
I have been in the middle seat on 6-hour flights before, and these two people were not sitting on either side of me, but I wish they had been. One would be Paul McCartney, because, and I just love him. He's just like a super nice guy, I think. I never met him. And then the person on the other side, I would love to have Jesus sitting on the other side, because I got a lot of questions for this guy. And then, you know, not bad ones, but I just want to know, you know, how did you remain so calm and cool when everybody around you is absolutely insane and the world is going crazy and people are just mean? What do you do? How do you deal with that? And I would hope that he would have some answers, you know, for our time. So, thanks.
All right, I'm all in politics mode, so I'm going to say Elizabeth Warren. Yes, and I would ask her what her plan is for everything. And then the other seatmate, I'm debating between like Timothy Oliphant, so I could just kind of, be inappropriate with him the whole time. Make jokes. Or like a comedian to lighten things up, like I don't know, John Mulroney or something, just to have fun, because I don't want to just be depressed by the time the flight is over, so.
I'll go next just so he doesn't have to raise the microphone and then lower it again for me and then raise it. So on my 6-hour flight with me in the middle seat, you pretty much want to give me alcohol, and I don't drink because 6 hours of me in the middle seat is not a good plan. The people I would like to have with me, I think I would like to have Brene Brown, because I think she's fascinating at studying human behavior, and that is a subject that I'm very interested in. And then Ellen DeGeneres, because I think she's fascinating at studying human behavior, and a subject I'm very interested in.
I had this question on Facebook. Of course, they only asked you for one person who you'd like to sit next to. On a 6-hour flight, I'd like Marcel Marceau. Because I don't want to talk to people. I've been on these flights, and just be quiet. But if I had to pick other people, I would probably be some of the dead comedians, like Buddy Hackett or Jack Parr, or someone who really knows how to talk and be funny and be entertaining. So.
All right, some great names, some great memories there. Thank you, Group 1. I'm going to start easy again. Someone give me an animal. I'm looking for an animal. Anybody? A cow. Okay, fantastic. We have a cow. All right, just because I like them, someone please give me an adjective. An adjective. Yes? Thirsty. Great one. Very good. Okay, we have thirsty for that. What else do I have on here? We did that one. Okay, we'll go a little bit more generic. I asked for a city last time. This time I need a location. The classic improv question, can I have a location, please? Moon. The moon. Lovely. Okay, fantastic. And then my final question here, I'm looking for a good name for a household pet, and I want to be very specific here. Dogs and cats are pets. Everything else is an affectation. So I am looking for, yes? Shadow? Shadow, that's a great name. Okay, thank you very much, audience. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, need my other group up here of tellers. I would like you to think about a person or a group, someone famous, a band, whatever, that isn't famous enough, that doesn't get enough love, and also tell us why you love this group, person so much, and why everyone else should check them out. So let's start with Sandra.
Hot Tub Flashback. Oh, yeah, that's a good name for a rock band, the Hot Tub Flashback. Does this have to be a musical group, Jack?
No, a person.
Oh, any group.
Yeah.
I say people who don't like the fact that Halloween happens for 2 months.
Okay.
My favorite people.
All right.
So when I turned 21, I had the opportunity to go to a concert with who was then my favorite band. And unfortunately for them, they were in the style and in the same time era as REM. So they're widely believed never to have gotten the love that they deserved. And this band was called the Connells, and they're actually still touring now and then. So if you get a chance, check them out. Have a little taste of my college days.
I'm going to go with Dave Grohl as a member of the leader of the Foo Fighters. But he was also in a band called Nirvana in the day. I'm sure everybody in this room probably knows who Nirvana is. I was watching Saturday Night Live a couple of years ago, and Dave Grohl was playing the drums along with the rest of the Foo Fighters and backing up Paul McCartney, who was the one that said about Paul McCartney. And one of my kids was watching with me, and I talked about Dave Grohl, and oh my God, that's Nirvana that's standing up there, because it really was. It was Nirvana, and he said, Dave Grohl was in a band before the Foo Fighters?
I'm going to take a totally different tack. Has anybody in this room ever heard of Elizabeth Zimmerman? There are no knitters in this room. Elizabeth Zimmerman defined some of the techniques that we use now in knitting. She's got fabulous patterns, easy to do, all in garter stitch. Those of you who are knitters will understand that means you do the same stitch all the time. You don't have to do anything fancy. More people need to know about her because I think there'd be more knitters as a result.
You are suddenly the most famous person in the world. Why are you famous? And how do you use the power of your celebrity? You are now the most famous person in the world. Why and how do you use that power?
Okay, this is weird because when the other group was up talking about their celebrities, for some reason I thought it would be interesting to sit next to Lizzie Borden. She'd have the outside seat, of course. It's all yours, Lizzie, wherever you want. I forgot the question. What was the question?
You are now the most famous person in the world.
All right. So I committed some horrible crime of some sort, or so you think, and you'll just have to find out if I did it or not.
Okay.
This is a horrible question for me. First off, if I'm sitting between two people on an airplane for 6 hours, I'm not going to talk to either one of them. So I don't want to be famous. I really don't. I just want to keep to myself. So I'm going to actually answer the first question. I want to sit between anybody and Donald Trump because I want to wail on him for 6 hours.
In keeping with my great fondness for Elizabeth Zimmerman, I would be famous for yarn bombing the entire globe. Yarn bombing, you may have seen online pictures where people have knit sweaters for statues or trees or jitney buses. I'm going big. I'm doing the whole globe. People will know me.
I never wanted to be famous, so I think if I had to be the most famous person in the world, it would be an alter ego. And actually, I have one that I have not used in many, many, many years. But some of you can imagine that my voice at times gets a little squeaky and piercing. And years ago, my friends and I, we used to gather at this place to hang out, and we called it our Hall of Justice, and we were all the super friends. And we came up with our superhero names and our superhero skills that we had. And mine was the ability to emit a deafening, like, stop in your tracks squeal. And my name at the time was Poopy Kitty Extravaganza Girl. So I would have a costume, no one would know it was me, but I would be a world-renowned crime fighter.
All right, fantastic. Let's give a quick round of applause for these tellers. Go ahead and take your seats. Okay, and as with round one, we've now gotten a lot of inspiration. We can also fold in the inspiration that we got from, we have a very enthusiastic teller, so I am going to go even more long and drawn out in explaining this. Okay, Sandra Hall has a story for us already. Let's go.
It's more to do with short-term memory. I didn't want to forget it. And I'm going to hit a few points here, and Erin, this one's for you because it involves knitting. And Jessica, it's for you because it involves France. And it's for everybody else because it involves sitting, well, it was a train ride, not a plane ride, but it was probably about 6 hours. So in 1985, I was a graduate student studying in France, living in the Loire Valley. And I had a friend, another American who I met when we were both doing a month-long course in Paris before we went off to our respective towns for the rest of the school year. And he was in Grenoble, down in the Alps. So when November came around and there were a couple long weekend holidays, I took advantage of that and a Eurail pass and went down to visit him. But, and this hits another point, I was poor. I was a graduate student living abroad, and it was pretty temperate in Tours where I lived. It rained a lot, but it wasn't really cold yet. But I realized I was going down to the mountains, and I did not have gloves. And even at the farmer's market, Place Jean Jaurès, on the weekend, gloves are too damn expensive. So I went to the yarn shop that was on every corner. It's a great place. Bought a ball of yarn, some double-sided needles, and a pattern for gloves. And I spent my 6-hour train ride knitting myself a pair of gloves. I was seated, it was a 2-seater, so I only had one person on the other side of me. And we smiled and nodded at each other, but we didn't speak. So the whole way I was knitting, and I know all the 5 fingers in French. We got la pouce, l'index, l'annuaire, majeur, l'annuaire, and auriculaire. And auriculaire, they say, is tied to oral, A-U-R-E-L, because you use it to dig the wax in. Hey, it's French, you know, it's classy, all right? Anyway, so I was knitting my gloves, knitting, and just as we pulled into the station at Grenoble, I was just tying off the second glove and ready to go. And my seatmate spoke to me for the first time before she got off. She said 4 words: bravo pour les gants, bravo for the gloves.
I'm a story woman. When Catherine mentioned alter egos, I found myself going back to the days of AOL chat rooms. I was a host in the 30-something room, which gives you an idea of how long ago it was, because I qualified. The 30-something room had a hot tub, and we would sit around and talk about all sorts of things. Butterbeer had not been invented yet, but if it had been available, we would have been drinking it. And at one point, I decided things were getting a little boring. So I signed on using 2 other screen names, Dulcinea and Desdemona, who proceeded to have a cat fight in the middle of the hot tub. Now, people who knew that I had these other names were going around behind me saying, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'm having a good time. Aren't you having a good time? Watch this." It got into a real bitch battle. And I was having more fun watching other people responding to this and then trying to figure out, had I gone off the deep end? We did finally resolve it. Desdemona was drowned in the water because, well, Othello wasn't there to save her. And Dulcinea went chasing some guy who was riding this raunchy-looking horse and wearing a shaver's bowl and tilting at windmills. It made for a really interesting evening.
So Catherine had talked about running out of gas earlier, so that got me going on this particular story. My last car when I was in the Navy was an El Camino. Is it a car? Is it a truck? I love that vehicle. My wife doesn't really understand that thought process. If they still made them today, I probably have one. So it was the color of the moon. There I've tied into the categories. And it could carry a cow because it was a car or a truck. So I've tied into the categories. Now, to be fair, that car was a piece of crap. I don't know how old it was at the time. I probably paid $500 for it. This was like 1981. And just to give you an idea, this was the boombox days, and this car had 2 speakers in the front in the dash, and then 2 speakers in the back that were on either end of the car. And these speakers had just rotted out. You couldn't hear anything. And so I had a boombox, and I used to carry the boombox on the front seat beside me, and with the speakers switched all the way to the left, and then because the speaker on the front only had the one on the right would work. So 3 or 4 speakers didn't work, so I had to bring a boombox to be able to listen to the stereo in that car. The other part that was really bad was the dashboard lights did not work. And so I took the dashboard apart and I tried to fix it. Now, the problem with trying to fix it was that it was basically powered by, it was like Christmas lights on a big plastic sheet. You needed a big plastic sheet in order for the lights to work, and the lights didn't work. I had gone to a junkyard, tried to find a replacement part. This was a 10-year-old car, so there were no replacement parts from the dealers, and I never found a part to make it work. So when I put it back together, this was the days, there were no digital gauges in those days. It was regular gauges with mechanical arms. And the gas gauge, I didn't know how much gas was in the car at the time, so where do you set the gas gauge? So I'm going to just keep driving this car until I run out of gas. And that's exactly what happened. It looked like it had 3/4 of a tank. It didn't have 3/4 of a tank, it had nothing. And, well, I ran out at an intersection. I was in the Navy at that time. It was in the San Diego area, and a lot of major intersections. And I ran out of gas at an intersection. There was a gas station right there. And so I walked over to the gas station, and I need gas. Could you have a gas can? Sure, we have a gas can, but why would I give you a gas can? You see that car sitting over there in that intersection? That's me. That's where I ran out, right there. That's me. So they gave me some gas. And I walked across, filled it up, went back, gave them the gas can, and then drove in over there to fill up my gas tank. And at that point, I knew where the gas gauge should be. So I immediately went back to the Navy base, pulled the dashboard apart again, and reset the gas gauge so it was right where it needed to be. And I never ran out of gas with that car again.
I am the world's worst sports fan. I don't care about sports. I don't understand sports. I don't follow sports. So when I was little, my family would go to Chicago every summer, and one of the big treats was we would all go to a Cubs game. And I got to go too. So if you'd like to take an 11-year-old who has no interest in something somewhere, that's perfect, because it will be hours of nothing interesting happening. So the most vivid memory I have of the Cubs game was my cousin Laura decided that she wanted to go for a walk. Anyone want to go for a walk? Yes, I want to go for a walk. Anywhere, please, let's go for a walk. So we're walking around the concourse at the Cubs game, and Laura starts walking a little bit funny. And something's not right with Laura. Laura's about 13, and I'm 11, and she's just not right. And then Laura falls to the ground. Well, I don't really know what the protocol is for that. So I'm 11. I don't know what to do with her, and I don't know where to go. And so finally I find a security guard, and I'm like, that's my cousin, and I'm gonna go find my mom. So I go running back to the stands, and I get to the bottom, and I start yelling up, Mom! This is not a helpful word. So lots of mothers are looking at me, and my mother, who is here tonight, gets annoyed. Stop yelling! Come up here! Come up here! And I'm going, Laura fainted! Laura fainted! So finally, they hear Laura fainted, and my grandmother, my mom, my aunts, 2 aunts, everybody, whoa, Laura fainted, why didn't you say so? So, I don't know where Laura fainted. I don't remember that part. I just remember panic, guard, cousin, run. So eventually we did find Laura. And the good news was that took up most of the baseball game, and then it was time to go home. That is my vivid memory of going to Wrigley Field.
All right, so we're coming down to the end here. I do have one last game, and I'm going to need all of our tellers up here for that. It's also going to give us a chance to get a photo. Here's how this works. We are collectively going to tell a story, but we are going to do it one word at a time. So, and I think, so I'll have you, let's go in a line here.
So I start.
I'll give the first word. So, we're going to go in a line. Each person adds a word as they come along, and you need to build the story. Try and make a coherent sentence, and then the next coherent sentence, and go like that. All right.
You're hopeful, aren't you?
Well, let's see. This could either be brilliant or a total train wreck. Either way, these folks leave with a memory. All right, and so we begin the one word at a time story. Tomorrow,
The
Moon.
Will
shine
Thirstily.
On a cow. Am I
What word?
Am I
On.
disqualified?
Yes, you're on. No.
On.
cauliflower.
This
Is
The
most
horrifying.
Experience.
I.
Have.
Never.
had. All right. Nicely done, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Drive safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Okay, and the picture.
There you go. I don't have anything witty to say. That's why I don't do it.
Thank you.